What is medical astrology? Astrology gets a bad name in the current context because a lot of times people either have demonized it, and that is an ill placed demonization, or they understand it only to be horoscopes. But astrology is so much more complex than that. Join me this week as I sit down with Taylor Sappington as we talk about what medical astrology is and how it can provide insight into the inner workings of your body. Hi, I'm Adrienne Irizarry. I'm an East Asian medicine practitioner who is passionate about women's health and helping women to live their best lives. My goal is to put you in the driver's seat of your health, offering holistic solutions for a symptom-free life. Statements made in this program are for educational purposes only and not intended as a substitution for medical consultation or advice. We do not claim to diagnose, treat, or cure any diseases. This podcast is inclusive and welcomes all gender identities. The focus of the program is on biological function, and we will use the term women throughout, but it is referencing physiological and social challenges for biology, not identity. Come as you are, I am happy you're here and welcome all performances of identity. I hope you find something helpful in this show. Welcome back to another episode of the Reproductive Rebel podcast. I am overjoyed to once again share the microphone with the amazing Taylor Sappington.
You
Welcome to the
giddy? I'm
show.
giddy. I'm giddy. I'm giddy.
We always have the best conversations.
We do. And we don't hit record for at least an hour. Close
Yeah.
to it.
Yes.
Yeah. I'm so excited to be back.
Well, thank you so much for coming back. You have
Yeah.
some really cool and exciting change afoot in the work that you are doing. And I feel like we're both sitting in this alchemical space right now
What a beautiful word
where,
to use.
yeah, well, that's what it feels like. It's juicy. Like we're
Yeah.
both being invited to step into the next evolutionary step of who we are as practitioners and the gifts that we
Yeah.
offer to people. So I'm so excited about the direction that Taylor is taking her work, and I just had to have her on to talk about the core of where
Yeah.
she's taking this work. So, for people who haven't been with us on this journey and listened to the two of us talk on your show and mine,
Yes.
if you would like to introduce yourself, Taylor.
So my name is Taylor Sappington. I am the owner of Tailored Wellbeing. Tailored Wellbeing was a passion project of mine. I was a chronically ill patient that was seeking answers that never, ever, regardless of how many doctor's offices I went to, how many prescriptions I took, how many tests that I ran, came from the allopathic model. I worked in the allopathic model for 8+ years. So I've seen a lot of different aspects of death, dying, recovery, etc. But as a chronically ill patient, it wasn't until I found acupuncture, traditional Chinese medicine, eclectic herbalism, homeopathics, energy work, different types of therapy that work with the energy body, the mind, body, soul connection, that I started to see resolve. And tailored well-being was born from a place of wanting to provide a safe space for women to come home to themselves, and that's evolving. So tailored well-being, by the time you all hear this, will be no more. That chapter of my life has been closed, and it was such a fun chapter of life, and it prepared me for this next chapter of life I'm stepping into. But I'm really coming back to my roots. So the name of the new practice is Rooted Radiance. Took me what? A year and a half to get here, Adrienne?
I love it.
And we're going to be herbs and medical astrology, because those are two practices that I abandoned long ago for the shiny new gadgets and fancy tools of integrative health. And it wasn't until I found my way back to these tools that I was like, oh, my life all makes sense. It always made sense, all along the way, but you forget until you remember. And I've remembered.
Oh, that's such a beautiful way to word it. You forget until you remembered. Yes.
Yeah.
I deeply resonate with that. And for anybody who's not watching this, who's listening to this, when she talked about the fact that she's coming home to her roots, I literally saw like this glow light up around her. Like she's so, you could tell.
Respectfully, I feel like I'm coming out of the closet. I don't know how else to say it. Like
Yes.
there are all of these tools that have been in my toolkit for so long, but they don't even fit into the health and wellness space because they've been deemed weird, you
Mhm.
know? And like I'm so excited to work within the weird at this point because the weird works.
You're talking to the person who is a pelvic steaming practitioner
So you get
before
it. I know you get it.
yoni steaming was like a
Yes,
thing
a
that people
thing.
actually knew about.
Yeah, I mean, and to your point, steaming is what brought me back into my body. Steaming is
Mhm.
what helped me build days into my cycle. Steaming is what alleviated a lot of the discomfort. I genuinely believe part of my work with you is what eventually led to the catalyst for me coming back to Taylor, if herbs work and steaming work, what are
Mhm.
you doing?
Yeah.
And why are you not using the tools at your disposal? And why are you relying on all of these overpriced, you know, misunderstood tools? Let's face it, we don't have standardization with these functional tests. And I don't know if standardization would work for or against us. Pardon me, we have standardization in the allopathic model, and I don't really think it works towards us, especially women,
Yeah.
females. But, working with you, I was like, I just had to have a lot of light bulb moments. I don't know what to say. Like your late 30s, early 40s, for all you women who are afraid of aging, oh my God, run towards it with fire under your feet because it's fucking amazing.
Yes. I had a guest on this season and she was talking about it as the fire in her belly. And I was
Yes.
like, "Oh, I love that." I got goosebumps when she said it. I get
Yeah.
goosebumps every time I remember
Hmm.
rekindle that same fire in my belly kind of
Yeah.
feeling. It's true. Like your late 30s, early 40s, and
Amazing. They're
we could do a
hard.
oh, they're hard. We could do a whole
Yeah.
show on that. They are hard. However, they are transformative.
Hmm.
And
Alchemical.
I yes,
Hmm.
alchemical, and it feels like a phoenix rising. I'm
Hmm.
seeing it in my own work as well. I'm
Yeah.
coming out of the spiritual broom closet, so to
Yeah.
speak, where I've always understood in traditional Chinese medicine that the emotional body is a big player in the health picture. I've
Yeah.
always understood that. However, the deeper I go into this work, and the more I really truly sit with the things that are making people sick, the emotional body is such a big trigger. And we hold so much close to the vest and stuff into our womb space
Yeah.
that I can't not step into this next evolution of me and my work. And it's funny, you were talking about how this has come full circle for I
Hmm.
stepped into this work because of what was happening in your life. I resonate with that deeply because I stepped into this work and became a fertility specialist because I was struggling and I couldn't get answers. So many of us who are on these healer journeys or are working in this as healers come from this. I'm having a struggle. I can't find answers. I want to be the resource that I can't find. And then as you do work over a long period of time, you've worked with several hundred people, so on and so forth, all of a sudden you start seeing certain patterns
Hmm.
emerge, certain things emerge. You do that spiritual awakening within yourself, and you're like, wow, I could really take this to a completely different place. The world needs this to look a different way in order for me to not only feel like I'm fulfilling my soul's journey, but also to meet what the needs of the general public are right now. And that's where I feel like my tools have gone with Rebel Remembered, rebranding my holistic women's health practitioner program to Rebel Rising. Again, rising from the ashes, right? We're
Yeah.
burning away this old story, this old narrative. My son, the birth of my son, completed
Mhm.
that circle for me. And
Yeah.
out of that, literally during my early days of my maternity leave with him, I felt something new blooming. And you and I were having those conversations about how you
We were
had that.
falling apart in each other's inbox, okay, guys? Like that's what we were doing.
We were like, where is this supposed to go
What
next?
the fuck?
But that's exactly why I wanted to have you on to share where you're going now, because I'm so excited about where your work is blossoming and blooming and taking you.
Yeah. It's interesting. You're talking about Enzo being your full circle. I had a nodal return. Right? And nodal returns occur roughly every 18 years for us, right? So there will be more nodal returns in my future. I now just have the information, knowledge, and thus power to know how to navigate them in a way or prepare to navigate them in a way that they don't totally crush me because this nodal return crushed me.
It was rough.
Okay. Holy cow. My north node is in Aries. So your north node is a point in your birth chart where you grow into your north node. It is a place where your soul is seeking to expand its knowledge base, right? It's like you're constantly in the classroom of your north node. And Aries is the infant of the zodiac, right? So the innovator, the action taker, the get off the bus and don't look either way, just go kind of kid. Like that's the, but Aries can also be very like, it's all about how I take care of me and what I'm doing to prioritize me and how I support me. My South Node is in Libra. Libra is all about, we've had so many conversations about this, Adrian, right? Like Libra is all about prioritizing others' needs and supporting in the background, making sure other people's, expectations are fulfilled and supporting the fulfillment of those expectations. It's really all about a bit of self-sacrifice, a bit of codependency and the lower octave unhealthy expressions. And in today's society, I'll call 'em, like, hello, I was codependent, people pleaser. Like it was awful. Business, personal, romantic. And this nodal return was like, I almost felt like life was like rudely shutting the door in my face. Thank you. And was like, you're going to get it this time. I'm going to rip everything that doesn't serve you out of your life in a really, what seems like tragic but poignant way. And you're going to grow into yourself because you're halfway through life and we don't have time to fuck around. Let's go.
Yeah. Oh, I resonate with that.
Yeah. So that's how astrology made its way back into my life. My life was falling apart, and you and I had talked about babies. Babies just didn't land in my sphere and where I am. And even my birth chart speaks to like, hey, you did your baby thing. You have your son. You're going to pour all of your resources into him. But an overarching theme in your life is learning how to prioritize yourself and your needs first so that you can pour into other people's cups. And a
Mm.
baby just didn't fit that narrative for me or the picture for me, right? But I think they can both be equally as potent and like really refining boundaries and really refining focus because
Mhm.
we've seen that in you and the trajectory you're taking. So my life falling apart is what led me back to astrology
Mm.
and really like diving deeply, pardon me, into the study of it. And like, astrology, you just have those light bulb moments where you're like, all makes sense. Why have I not been using this all along? Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And so I want to take that a step further
Yeah.
because astrology isn't just horoscopes, okay? And a lot of people think that it is. Astrology has a very rich history
Yes.
and a very dynamic and very important
Yeah.
role that it has
Hmm.
played in society at large. I mean, you can see it in the way that Mayans looked at the stars. You can see it in the way that, if you were to look at like
It's found in the
Western.
Bible. I find that,
Mhm.
I say this respectfully and not to cut you off, like, but I
Yeah,
find that there's a lot of demonization of astrology through religion.
there
It's
is.
not predictive, it's cycles and patterns. It's not guesswork, it's math. And if you read scripture, what did the three wise men follow to
Stars.
find their way to the birth of, Jesus, right? Like, hello. So, like, it is found there's an entire sector of astrology called Christian astrology, right? So, it is not, I think it's fun to get on Instagram and be like, oh, if you're a cardinal sign or if you're, a fixed sign or if you're immutable, like, they're fun, they'll catch your attention. And a lot of it lands and resonates because they are parts of your person, like whatever the sign is that they're talking about. And that is only like one very small slice to a very large pie. When you take the math that is astrology and you understand the practical application of it, you realize that it has just been watered down and watered down. And it's a sophisticated tool.
It is.
Yeah.
It's really cool. Like, you can see so much of the dynamic aspects
Mhm.
of who you are in your chart, the way that your chart lays out, it can give you insight into areas where your body may need a little more love and support, or certain patterns that you have leanings towards. And it almost feels like it's kind of like when I sit down and I talk to people and I use my traditional Chinese medicine foundation, and people are like, "How did you know that I have sleep problems?" And it's like, because there is a pattern
Yeah.
there, and I see the pattern based on our conversation. And so, like,
Mhm.
they think it's magic, but it's not. It's just pattern recognition.
Mhm.
And medical astrology is very much the same way, where there are certain patterns that you see in different signs, in different houses, and when things
Mhm.
line up certain ways,
Mhm.
it can give you insight into relatively predictable outcomes.
Yeah. It's interesting. Medical astrology was a comprehensive medical system through the 1700s,
Yep.
right? And unfortunately, we can talk about this a bit, but threats of profit is
Mm.
essentially what led to its demise, if you will. But the chart, so the only people that had their birth time were the royals, the
Mm.
people of, higher echelon in society. So for us paupers, if you will, like the civilians of society, they didn't necessarily utilize a natal chart as we know it today with the specification of the birth time, location, etc. They used what is called decumbiture. And decumbiture was all about the application of a chart at the time bed lying or a disease set in. They could identify that time and your disease got its own astrological chart. And through that astrological chart of the bedline or the disease, they could then discern what was needed to treat with, sympathy or what's called antipathy, right? In opposite or in the same of. Oftentimes we use in medical astrology in the way that it pairs with herbs, you use the same herbs to fortify the organ system and you
Mhm.
use opposite herbs to address the symptoms. Fascinating. And it works,
Mhm.
so it was a comprehensive medical system until the 1700s. And the original doctors, which were the herbalists, nobody's ever going to argue with me about this because they were like in all cultures, the
Yes.
herbalists were the practitioners, okay,
Yes.
that worked with the people. But the herbalists would pair, especially in like in England, if you will, London, that area, they would pair, like we were talking about before we hit record, local herbs grown in the area with a decumbiture chart and they would write it out in plain English. So this is something that they did to go against the
Mm.
establishment too. They would make everything accessible and understandable by the general populace so they could buy the herbs, understand the prescription, read the decumbiture and treat themselves. And that's medicine, guys. Like
Mhm.
knowing how to read your chart, knowing what placements to look at, knowing what herbs to use, knowing what homeopathics to use, knowing what foods that serve you, and then applying based on the season of your life, that's medicine. That is the original medicine. So, medical astrology was a comprehensive medical system until the 1700s. And that's when prophets, started to become threatened. And decumbiture charts they date back to BCE. So,
Yeah.
this whole like, yeah, well, it's medicine. No, it's 200 years old. We're talking about like thousands of year old systems that we practice here, not the 200-year-old system that we think is medicine today.
I mean, and like you and I've said before, and we did say this before we hit record, is that, the acute traditional system of today is just that. It does very well with acute stuff.
Trauma medicine's
Mhm.
amazing in the US.
Yeah. But, like, if you're talking about patterns that are happening over long periods of time, I see it every day in my practice with people who are prescribed birth control pills to quote unquote solve and fix, and I'm still using air quotes because these words make me cringe to say them, period problems. And it's like, no, it doesn't actually fix anything. I have clients who will work with me and they'll end up going to an OBGYN for an annual and then they'll go
Mhm.
back in a panic because the white coated person told them that they have a thickening of their lining or they have this or they have that or whatever. But, they've had a biopsy, they've had a LEEP procedure, they've had a colposcopy, they've had whatever, and their tests are fine. But because of this thing, they either need to have a hysterectomy or they need to, you know what I mean? And it's very invasive. And the thing is, there's a lot of stops on that bus before you get to needing surgical intervention. And there's a lot of things that you can do also because the body likes to come back into right relationship with itself. That if you
Mm-hmm.
take the roadblock out that's leading to the disharmony, the body oftentimes can resolve a huge number of things before intervention is required. And none of that requires me needing to stick a scope. Like when I tell people I do pelvic steaming, they picture a Stanley steaming tool and they think I stick it up in their lady parts.
That's
And I'm
not how
like,
this works, guys.
I'm
This
like,
is
no,
not.
no. Like my whole practice is about non-invasive solutions because so much of the allopathic care model is invasive. We
Mhm.
take blood, we put tools inside of our lady parts, which is very triggering and traumatic for people. And like using things like medical astrology to take a look at somebody's chart and go, oh, well, you have a leaning in this direction or this direction. You might want to be proactive about this or be aware that, you know, because of this Pisces placement, that you're going to want to lean into sugar a little more than the
Mhm.
average person, or,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? And like, whenever I collaborate with you and I've
Mhm.
talked with you about certain presentations in a chart, I can see the TCM pattern like at the
Mhm.
same time.
Yeah.
It's
I think
wild.
these systems are built to work collaboratively. I just think we
Yeah.
were so spread out at one point. We didn't have the internet. We didn't have telephones. We didn't have text message. We didn't have international shipping. What did we have? We had like horse and carriage,
Mhm.
mule. So I sat with this person and this is what I saw. And you sat with this person and this is what you saw. Can we collaborate? Like collaboration only happened at a community level, which it's not even happening at a community level these days. That's a whole nother conversation, right? But
Yeah.
the internet is a beautiful tool because I can go find another practitioner who has, like yourself, a wheelhouse of expertise outside of my own and be like, here's what I'm seeing and here's what I want to do. What do you think? And you can be like, yeah, I see that. I see that. I see that. And here's what I would do differently. Like it's
Mhm.
beautiful to be able to collaborate on care, for people using two separate systems that basically tell you the same story and are geared towards the same outcome, but they do it in a different way, you
Mm.
know?
And now a break from our conversation for a partnership message. You've been told to hustle, grind, wake up early, and do more. But here's the truth: rest is the most productive thing you can do. And the right kind of rest starts with Sia Silk Sleep Mask, your new sleep sanctuary. I've tried so many sleep masks and I thought I just had to deal with the discomfort of slipping straps and light still getting through. But then I found this one and I'm never going back. Made of 100% mulberry silk, it's the only mask that creates total blackout with its comfortable, oversized eye cups that don't smush my lashes while feeling weightless on my face. My sleep, next level. This isn't just a sleep mask, it's an investment in your nervous system. Sia Silk is a women owned small business committed to high quality and sustainable luxury. Check out the show notes for the link to grab yours and rest like you mean it. And now, back to the show.
So you were talking about infertility because you deal with a lot of women with irregular cycles, and inability to conceive or inability to sustain, viable conception. When you look at the wheel of your, like, if somebody has never seen an astrology chart, like you go to a place like astro-seek.com or like AstroDent, you put in your birth information. They even give you a little box that says unknown time. It's really ideal to know your time. If I don't have someone's time, I'm running it off of a 6 a.m. or a 12 p.m. perspective. Like I'm
Yep.
just going to try generalization, right? But you put in your birth date, your time, your location. It's usually going to pull up in a Placidus system. So that's the fun thing about astrology. There are different systems of
Mm-hmm.
astrology.
Yep.
I read Placidus and whole sign. I do not read Vedic. Vedic is a whole nother animal in and of itself. And I find
Yeah.
Vedic to be a little more predictive,
Yes.
right? And the placements look a little different, right? But typically,
I say Vedic is very real talk, like almost to an abrasive point.
Taurian sun in Vedic. I'm like, I don't see it, but I got you, like, so you pull up your chart and you'll be able to see there's a wheel and there's 12 slices of the pie on your wheel. And each slice of the pie on the wheel has an annotation on the inner circle: 1, 2, 3, 4. Any house in your birth chart can potentially catalyze a symptom physically and physiologically, right? But your first house, your sixth house, your eighth house, and your 12th house are the four primary points I would start if there was nothing else that stood out. And you and I have spoken about this. A stellium would stand out to me. So a house that has 3+ pattern planets in it, pardon me, I'm going to go right there first. Like, okay, let me see house one, and then I want to go to that stellium because there's going to be amplification of the energy of that house and the planets, right? But if we're speaking from just a general perspective, your first house is all about the sign that rules your first house. I'm a Leo. Okay. So I have a Leo, what's called ascendant or rising. When I get stressed, Adrian can verify this for you guys. When I get stressed, my adrenals take a massive hit,
Yes.
right? So my body predominantly processes stress through the adrenals. This might sound funny to some people, but let's just say you were a Virgo ascendant or first house. Your stomach, I should say small intestine, is going to take a huge hit, right? If you're a Cancer and in your nervous system, because Virgo is ruled by, Mercury. But if you're a Cancer in the first house, it's going to be your stomach and your breasts, your hollow organs. So, like, every sign has a personality and organ systems which they oversee. But your first house is all about how your body processes stress and how you present to the world, right?
Interesting. I'm a Libra rising.
Okay. I can see that in your personality though, because your demeanor is so like caring and supportive. And a lot of what you do is supporting people behind the scenes to
Mhm.
reach their goals. Oh, and you focus on dualistic organ systems like the kidneys, the adrenals, and the ovaries. See how fun that is, guys? Like we just whip that right off, And Adrian's sitting here nodding her head, like, yep, yep. Now, when Adrian gets stressed, her
Mhm.
kidneys are going to take a hit, her ovaries are going to take a hit. Can we confirm that?
Yes. 8-year infertility journey, anybody? Yep.
Right?
Mhm.
So, like, when we know these things, which you already know through the modality you practice, we can go in there. We can be like, okay, we got to really hit heavy on the kidney support. We got to really hit heavy on the ovarian support. We probably need to support the adrenals as a byproduct of kidney dysfunction as well, too.
Right.
You can see it so clearly. There's no like, well, what does this lab metric mean? And like, how do I put it in the big picture? It's clear,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So your first house is really all about how you process stress, which organ systems are impacted by it, and how you can support it because there's always herbs that complement the house that we're attempting to support and the organ systems we're attempting to
Mhm.
fortify, if you will. Then we like go over to the sixth house. This is traditionally it's known as the house of health and acute disease, but I really like looking at it as like the house of preventative health. Your
Mm.
sixth house and the personality of your sixth house. I'm a Capricorn. I need structure and freaking discipline every single day in order to maintain health, right? And I have to be really good at maintaining my habits daily, or acute disease is going to be problematic for me. And Capricorn rules a variety of different organs, right? But the skin is one area that it rules. Ligaments, joints, tendons, think structure to a degree, right? So when I'm stressed, guess what happens? I hive while my adrenals are tanking in the first house. So, like, my skin gets this expression of heat, right? And my adrenals are pumping that heat out. So, like, everything starts to work in synchronization with one another. But if I'm mindful about my discipline and routine and the way I consume food, your sixth house is really all about how you consume food too. As a Capricorn, I really love structure and discipline around my meals. Imagine that. Oh, and manners are a big deal for me. So if we're out to eat, mind your manners, like that's a big deal for me. And Virgo rules my second. That can influence the way that you approach food too. So Virgo's practical and detail oriented. And it's a judgmental sign, but they discern well. So like this all starts to play with one another. So then I have like the eighth house. Your eighth house is all about physical inheritance of familial shit. I don't know how else to put it. Like, okay,
Your
what some
intergenerational stuff.
like the mental emotional shit is the 12th house of intergenerational and like ancestral. But the 8th house is like mom had thyroid issues, dad
Yeah.
had this cancer, grandmama had this, grandpapa had this, right? So it's all about looking at what rules that house for you, because there's natural rulers too, and we don't have enough time to get into that today. But like, what rules your 8th house, the sign, the organ systems it oversees, and potential planetary placements, right? This is where we can find fifth house says a lot about fertility just because it is literally the house of family and creative expression. And I do think bringing children into the world is part of your creative expression, right? It is a labor of love, if you will. I think that's
Mhm.
so beautiful how that goes together, but then you look at the 8th house, if someone's having a hard time with conception and maintaining viable pregnancy or autoimmunity, the 8th house can tell you, give you clues as to what it is you need to do to detach and just like in a healthy way dissociate from familial patterns that are
Oof.
potentially associated with you on a cellular level. Like your astrology is so deep, it's cool too, right? And the 8th house natural ruler is Scorpio. Scorpio rules the reproductive organs and the bowels. So your ability to eliminate and get rid of toxic waste, right? And then we bounce over to your 12th house, and your 12th house is all about ancestral trauma, what you were like, what was laid on your heart to bring into this lifetime and alchemize. There's our word of the podcast, right? But the 12th is also about what happens in the 6th house. If you don't pay attention to your 6th house, anything that is acute is eventually going to become chronic in your 12th house. Okay.
Oh, that's good to know. I didn't know
Right.
that.
So, three guesses what my 12th house is ruled by, just based on what you know about me.
Ugh.
What do we really struggle with, Adrian? What do we just addressed?
Pete.
Right? So, I'm a Cancerian 12th house. Okay.
Okay.
So, my stomach,
Yeah.
right, is anything that's not addressed in the acute becomes chronic in my stomach.
Yeah.
Well,
Okay.
shit. You know what I mean? And then I have a Venus placement in my 12th house, which is lymphatics.
Oh my word.
My,
That's wild.
I could have saved myself so much time, like so many years ago, and been like, well, this is what's going on.
Yeah.
And where do I go first?
Yeah.
And the other house that I have to pay attention to, but it's not a traditional health house, is my 11th house because there's a stellium in Gemini, which rules your nervous system.
Um,
And it's my Chiron and my Sun and my Mercury and my Black Lilith moon. Holy shit. My
wow.
11th house is like
You have some
on
big
poppin'.
players in that house.
Yeah. So, like, going through your houses is just one simple way to start getting an idea as to what's going on in your physical body. And, like, it explains the patterns. If you do this in the 6th house, where you prevent this in the 12th house, which prevents this in the 1st house. And if you're stuck, even though you're paying attention to your 6th, what's going on in your 8th, right? How are we tending to our 8th? And that doesn't even get into like your Mars, your Saturn, your North and South nodes.
Yep.
What is Mars? They're gendered. So astrology is very like gendered, if you will. So like Mars is a male, like we refer to him as him. Saturn, same thing, like him.
Him. Yep.
And your Mars placement, which they would tell you that if you go look up your birth chart, like where your Mars placement sits is typically where you're going to find inflammation, swelling, redness. My Mars is in my 6th house. But it's good. Mars likes to play in the 6th house. There's drive, and Capricorn is structured, right? So, like, it's a good pairing there. But Mars is the seat of acute disease in your chart, where Saturn, cold, rigid, limiting, restrictive, is all about chronic disease. So, you find
Uh-huh.
your Saturn in your chart, and you're like, oh, this is where I'm going to see. And I cannot remember right now as we're riffing on this where my Saturn is. But then you've got Jupiter and you've got Venus, right? Like Jupiter is the planet of expansion and growth. Like if that is a placement, let's just say like breast cancer, 12th house, chronic issues, like Jupiter's just going to grow whatever is around it. It could be positive or quote unquote negative, if you will, but it's the planet of, again, expansion and growth, fat and oily. Like these are substances that go along with Jupiter. And then there's your south and your north node. And we talked about this a bit at the beginning, right? feel like I'm just talking, so cut me off if need be, you know. But your north node is the power surge in your chart. It's like where you can really learn to nourish, to harness energy. So again, that Aries, and Aries is all head, like my major placements are neck up, or I should say belly button up, if you will, right? Whereas your south node is where you leak energy.
Hmm.
It's like a non-tangible leak of energy, but once you see your south node and you're like Libra, codependency, people pleasing in a lower expression, I'm like, oh my God, my life has now been solved. Thank you. Like, holy shit, now that I see it, I can't unsee it. And boundaries aren't bitchy. I'm here to learn that in this lifetime. Boundaries aren't bitchy, you know, and me before we, unless it's an emergency, it's not bitchy, you know, like I've
Yep.
done the whole play behind the scenes. I've probably burnt myself out with that. Hello, this whole last, what, 3 years has been that, learning that lesson.
Hmm.
Your birth chart can literally lay out for you in plain English where your primary issues are, what aspects are contributing to that, and what you need to do consistently. Health is a ritual, people. It's not something you do for 3 months and then you jump off the boat. Health is a ritual in order to get yourself in a place, in a space where you're like, I don't really feel like I need to go to the doctor.
Oof, I feel so seen right now because you're like talking about the Mars and the Saturn placements, and
Yeah.
I was like, oh, both of mine are in the second house in Scorpio. So, Adrian having a hard time
Okay.
conceiving a
Makes a
baby.
whole lot of sense.
I should have just had you look at my chart and be like, so why am I having this issue when everything else is in alignment?
And Scorpio is a water placement, right? It's the strongest constitution of all the water placements, but water placements amplify what's in their environment. So, water placements have a tendency to be unboundaried. Water placements have a tendency to, and if you think about the natural ruler of the second house, it's Taurus, right? Aries, Taurus, right? So that's metabolism and thyroid, that's stagnation, that's density, you know, that's metabolic maladaptation.
Oh, wow. So Taylor just described me. Be- because I've had to actively work at a
Yes.
thyroid that stays in the normal zone, but
Mhm.
likes to hang out on the lower
And I
end
imagine
of
when
my
you're
range.
stressed, it dips,
It tanks. Yep.
right?
Yep.
You
Mhm.
know, so like when you look at that, like that makes a whole lot of sense. And with Scorpio, you're going to amplify. It's just going to magnify what's going on in that house. People with prominent water placements have a tendency to be really sensitive to their environments too.
Yes.
Like, you know, like environmental toxins, mold, the energy in the environment, you know,
Yep.
heavy water placements, you need to go dispel negative energy through water. Like that's how your body's going to
Yes.
process negative
Y-
energy.
Yes. I have to be by
Baths,
water. It
ocean,
totally calms my
a
nervous
fountain
system
in your
down.
house,
Yep.
you know. Yep. So like water is a really important element when you look at, because you've got heavy air in your chart too, and air
Oh,
makes you
yeah.
heady. And it's a beautiful headiness. We've talked about Aquarians, you know, like they're the people I need to like. I'm like, I don't care if you're walking while you eat. That's what I need you to do. It's going to get you back into your body, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. So this is why steaming was so beautiful for me
Hmm.
because I'm an Aquarius sun and moon,
Yeah.
and I'm a Libra rising. So talk
Yep.
about all that air, shall we?
Yeah.
And one of the most beautiful things about steaming for me is it brought me out of my head into my body. That's how I've explained it to my clients. It
And
gave me
it's
this
warm.
embodiedness.
It's warm
Yes,
and moist. And
it's
air
warm.
can be warm and moist, but tend to dry.
Yep.
So it probably balanced that constitutional or that elemental presentation in your ecosystem.
Yeah, it was like magic for me. I felt
Uh-huh.
like so many things like snapped into place. And yeah, I look at how my family recreates in the summer, and we now have a campsite that's along a river. And
Hmm.
like just literally sitting on the little front porch outside of the camper, just
Hmm.
I don't have to do anything except listen to
Yeah.
and watch the water move. And there are magical things that take place in my nervous system. Like I just feel completely different when I
Yeah.
have the ability to do this. And I've said to my husband multiple times, like, my goal for retirement is to be able to live near water. And he's
Hmm.
like supportive of it. He grew up in an oceanside town, but like, it's just funny because his mind is not as focused on the elemental part, but
Mhm.
he's a Scorpio sun. So like he's not adverse to the idea. It's just it isn't as big a driver for him as it is for me.
Right.
But no,
It's
you were talking about the 6th house. My
yeah.
Chiron is in Taurus, is in my 6th, and my Chiron placement is there.
Okay. So like Taurians are very resource motivated. They're very habitual. They're snackers too. Like snacky, snacky, snack. Like they love their food though. You move to a new area, find yourself a Taurian because they're gonna tell you where all the like the best food is, right?
Mhm.
They love rich, they love decadent, they love indulgent, They have to be really mindful of this because they can overdo it.
Mhm.
Chiron is the wounded healer in the sense that like you learn to live with the wound and then teach from it, but the wound never actually heals,
Yes.
you know?
Yep.
And when you look at like resource driven wounds,
I see
learn,
so much of myself in that statement.
right? So, like, you learn how to, like, wanting to have indulgence and recognizing that life may look indulgent in different ways than you
Mhm.
had imagined it. Like, it's cool when we learn how to work with our Chiron in a way that serves us because then we can serve other people. But it's all about, like, oh, that's a cut that's never going to heal. So, I'm going to just have to learn how to, like, be okay with the scab and teach
Mm,
people how I got the scab because it's never actually going to fully close. But love
yeah.
the scab for what it is. Chiron can be so potent. Like people hear wounded healer, and I'm like, no, it's not a bad thing.
Mm,
If you hear the story of Chiron, it's badass, like
yeah.
what Chiron was capable of doing, living with a lifelong injury that
Mhm.
was imposed upon him by, was it Hercules? I don't know if I'm getting the mythology correct. Don't quote me on that.
Well, and there was a rejection from his mother too because he
Yes.
was different.
Yep. Half man,
And
half horse.
yep. So,
And
like,
yep.
there was a multi-layer wounding that
Yeah.
happened there, both physical as well as emotional, and he took all of that and channeled it into his work,
Mhm.
helping others, and I resonate so deeply with that. I use Chiron frequency in the acutonics fork
Mhm.
system when I work with people, and this is actually where a lot of my astrological
Mhm.
understanding began, was
Yes.
in this training and being able to work with these frequencies in some really meaningful ways, and I always saw a lot of myself in Chiron, in the
Mhm.
story of Chiron, because this wounding that I was experiencing was like lifelong reproductive
Yeah.
related issues, and then turning that into something that helped others, but something that I still always have to
In
actively
you
work at.
accepting your wound, though, what happened?
Oh, I got so much better.
And you've helped hundreds of women restore
Yes.
their cycle and get pregnant. Oh, and eventually it lent yourself. I imagine the acceptance to a degree lent yourself to finally having that baby.
Yes, it was the surrender
Mhm.
in the fact that there was an aspect that I could control, and there
Mhm.
was an aspect, and this is why my work has gotten more spiritual also, is that there was an aspect to it that I just had to surrender and allow. And birth and conception is one of the true
Testaments to surrender.
yes, tests in our life to our ability to surrender
Mhm.
because we have to be able to allow and open and soften to receive the conception, but then also open and soften and allow to birth.
What do they say? There's that saying, it's not contraction, it's relaxation that allows you to finally have the baby. Like, stop
Yes.
telling the woman to contract. Like, stop talking to her about her contractions, talk to her about her relaxation.
Yes.
Like, much of the medical paradigm today is counterintuitive to being a
Mhm.
human being and the way the body actually wants to be. The body is an entity that wants to be acknowledged, just like you would acknowledge another person in a room. And the
Mhm.
body, as an entity wanting to be acknowledged, also wants to partner with you. It wants to have a partnership. And
Yes.
astrology and TCM allows you to build bridges between communication gaps and misunderstandings that bring you into this generative partnership that allows you to finally move forward instead of
Mm.
continuing to run in place. And it's so much more, I'm going to say, affordable to go
Mhm.
this route because in
Yeah.
the long run, like you make one, maybe two investments, and you have been a trained student for the rest of your life.
Mm.
And check ins may be needed, but aside from that, you are your own doctor,
Yes.
right? These practices are all about liberation. We're going to
Yes.
have to do this when we have like an hour to talk.
Oh, I love this. I love this. It really is liberation though too, because I look at myself like a coach and an
Yeah.
educator. And once I've empowered you with the
Yeah.
tools, now you can look at your body when you start becoming symptomatic and ask her, what do I need? Why is this showing up for me? And be able to make proactive decisions because you have the tools to understand. That's the whole reason we Dr. Google shit.
It's like you taught me damp, heat, and heat. Oh, I
Mhm.
know my constitution is air and fire and what that does and how it shows up. But my elemental constitution in astrology mimics my elemental constitution in TCM. You gave me the verbiage when I didn't know what to say.
Mhm.
And this has just allowed me to put it into a different context.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's so beautiful and it's so tangible.
Mhm.
And I've told people before, like, your astrology is the blueprint.
100%.
I mean, like, my midheaven is in Cancer. I am a healer. And once I came into alignment with that, I stopped being as sick,
My
right?
midheaven is in Aries. I'm a teacher.
Yeah. I love this.
It's so practical. Like, it's this simple, guys. Like, it's literally this simple.
It
It
is.
does not need to be more complex than what we're talking about here. It is so simple.
I love this. Well, I want to honor your time. Thank you so much, Taylor, for joining me. And this has been an amazing conversation. If you guys love this, share comments in the
Please.
Reproductive Rebel listeners folder so that join the group, join the conversation, and tell us a little bit about what you loved about this episode.
What did
Taylor
you
and I could,
like? What did you did not like? What do you want to hear more of? Adrian and I
yeah,
can riff again. So like,
totally.
yeah, we could do a birth chart read. Maybe next time we like pull your chart up. I don't know if we could make that possible in
Oh,
some way,
yeah.
but like, yeah, we could do a birth chart read and just compare notes. So
Yeah,
thank you so
absolutely.
much for having me on, for allowing me to spread my wings in this new chapter of life. I really appreciate you supporting me, rooting for me from the other side of the internet. Guys, we are internet friends. One day we will be real life friends. I consider it real life anyway, but we'll meet eventually. Just thank you. So much gratitude.
Thank you so much for joining us and sharing your wisdom in this new chapter. And I will definitely have Taylor on again because this is the kind of conversation that not only is nourishing for she and I, but I know resonates with so many of you. So thank you again, Taylor, so much
Thank
for your
you.
time and expertise. And until next time.
Bye, guys.
Thank you for joining me for another episode of Reproductive Rebel. Reproductive Rebel is recorded by certified peri-steam hydrotherapist and acutonics practitioner, herbalist, and Chinese nutritional therapist Adrian Irizarry of Moon Essence LLC. If you are interested in setting up an appointment for one-on-one support, ordering from our store, or checking out our course offerings, visit our website at moonessence.life. Be sure to subscribe to our newsletter and get insider information on upcoming events and offerings. Join the conversation. Like and follow us at Moon Essence Me on Instagram, Facebook, or LinkedIn. Your voices make this program possible. Thank you all for your continued support.